Welcome to Executive Insights. My guest today is Andrew Wood, EVP and CIO with CAPREIT. In this episode, we discuss topics including building a culture of collaboration, technology's role in transforming the real estate business centered around creating touchless, smart, secure, and green capabilities. Andrew also shares what motivated him to come out of the retirement and join CAPREIT a couple of years ago. Lastly, we explore the topic of talent and why the IT organization at CAPREIT has an employee engagement score of 94%. Hi, Andrew. Great to have you on the program. Welcome to Executive Insights.
Hi, Nasheen. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
Andrew, it's always a delight to speak with you. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. And, my first question is, really, you've been a part of our community for quite a while. And to me, you're truly one of the most strategic CIOs at the table who appreciate the value of partnerships. And in doing so, you always make an effort to understand the business, engage your stakeholders early, and foster a culture of collaboration across the board. I think these are really important topics for members in our community, but some are still struggling to figure out how to do them. Can you share some wisdom?
I can certainly try, and I'm not sure that there's any secret sauce, to be honest with you, but I've always been a business-focused CIO. I've always found it absolutely critical to understand the business in which I'm working. And from that, I've been able to derive relationships with key stakeholders in the business to really understand the needs, the challenges that they've faced, and ensure that everything that we've done from an IT perspective has been aligned with that. I think what I've tried to do is learn from predecessors who've been in the role prior to me, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked, why have particular individuals succeeded and others not, and really tried to learn from that. I've tried to identify key influences and build relationships with them within the organization so that I can again understand the pain points and look at things from a broader holistic perspective with a business lens, so that everything that we do from an IT standpoint is aligned with and is focused on those business needs and priorities. I think where I've seen challenges in the past from colleagues is that they've focused on the technology side of it. They've focused on elements which they have believed to be important, but have not necessarily aligned with the business goals, either tactically or strategically. And what I've tried to do with everything that I've done in all of the roles in which I've been given the opportunity to have that seat at the table is really ensure that we're seen to be an integral component of that leadership team. I being a figurehead in the context of IT, but really everyone with whom I work needs to share that same business focused culture and approach. And I've seen a lot of CIOs challenged with that, especially those who've got more of a technical bent, because the focus has been more on the technology side of it rather than the business alignment and the business engagement. I've always been a strong advocate of architecture, and in the last role, or in fact my current role, the first thing we did was actually engage with a business architect to ensure that we could really understand the business holistically, look at those pain points, understand the needs and align them and integrate them with a 3-year plan that was already in place within the organization to help ensure that any of the projects, the priorities that we had absolutely tied into those goals and objectives that have been set by the organization. My advice to anyone is really get to know the business, get to know the key influencers, build strong relationships with them, and really change if there is, a perception that IT is more of a service provider than a strategic partner. Really demonstrate that you are a strategic partner and the value that we can bring, given the breadth of insight that we have in the organization in which we're working. And so build relationships, take a business focus. Technology will come, and clearly we need to look at technology from a holistic perspective, but that will follow once we truly understand what the business needs are and how we can align those technology solutions with those business needs.
Very well said. And those are very sage advice. I appreciate that. And I think behind all of those advice is your level of maturity and being able to put your ego at bay. And I think that comes with maturity, and maturity comes with true confidence. And confidence is really knowing that by sharing your knowledge with others and enabling others to be successful, then and only then we can all be successful.
Sorry, I'd like to add to that because I think it's so true. I've never been afraid of having people who are smarter than me on my team, and giving colleagues the opportunity to grow and flourish and really provide an environment in which they can be successful. For me, that is success. Having colleagues who can take my role when I move on, building that succession planning, that for me is satisfaction. As well as obviously being able to help support the needs of the business, but it's being able to help people grow and create an environment where they can flourish. Where I've seen challenges in the past is leaders who've been maybe too controlling, shall we say, and have the feeling that they need to own all of the knowledge. You never can, especially in this industry. Well, technology is growing at such a pace. You need to draw on resources, draw on expertise, people with different perspectives, different ages, different backgrounds, and really leverage all of that knowledge and use it to the best good that you can for the organization in which you're working.
Absolutely. And Andrew, you spent most of your career in the insurance industry in the CIO capacity. And then some years ago, you tried to retire, but that didn't last very long. And I still remember when you made the decision and you sent me a note and we were trading notes, and you were kind and generous enough to offer to introduce me to your successor at the time. But today, not only are you busier than ever, but you're finding yourself in a completely different industry. So my question is, what motivated you to unretire, and why CAPREIT?
So really good questions, Nasheen. I was invited out of retirement, to be quite honest with you. I realized personally that I still had an interest and a desire to work, but an ex-president with whom I'd worked had an opportunity through a contact to undertake a strategic review of an IT department, which I gratefully accepted. I've always enjoyed analyzing and understanding problems, solving problems. And this was an opportunity to do just that. The organization happens to be CAPREIT, and I was able to go in, make some recommendations, and subsequent to that was actually invited into the organization to execute the recommendations and lead the IT team within the organization. And it's been an absolute joy, to be quite honest with you, to be back in the saddle, so to speak. I thought I was ready for retirement, as I'm sure a lot of colleagues get to the point where they feel that they're ready for a change, and it's invigorating. I've always found in my career taking risks in terms of stretching yourself, going beyond your comfort zone, brings rewards. And I've always had a passion for real estate. And this was an opportunity to leverage that passion and learn more about what is an incredibly interesting industry with a set of challenges that I hadn't had the opportunity to come across before. So from my standpoint, it was a learning exercise. And CAPREIT is a fantastic organization. It's another people-centric organization, very heavily focused on ensuring that the resources within the organization, the people, the colleagues, are well cared for. And that for me was really one of the determining factors in wanting to work with them, that people came first, and people do come first. And I think that's demonstrated throughout the organization.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And Andrew, I can just feel your excitement coming through the camera screen here. And clearly you weren't ready to retire. And I'm happy you made the decision to unretire. And CAPREIT sounds like a great place to be. And if I understand it correctly, CAPREIT is mostly a residential business. So how has the pandemic impacted the business? But more importantly, what's the role of technology in helping to manage change? And if you don't mind, I'd love to explore in these key areas. What's the technology's role in addressing health and safety? And the second area is, creating the convenience for both the tenants and prospective tenants. And thirdly, optimizing rent revenue and minimizing the vacancy. If you wouldn't mind, share your perspectives in those three areas, I'd really appreciate it.
I'll do my best. There's a lot within that question, Nasheen, and really technology has been accelerated as a consequence of the pandemic within the real estate industry. You're right, CAPREIT is the largest multi-residential real estate investment trust and has proved to be incredibly successful and resilient throughout the whole of the pandemic. Clearly, our residents and prospective residents have been badly affected in a number of different ways as a consequence of the pandemic. And CAPREIT again has extended its caring approach through to residents to help ensure that where we can, that they've been able to continue to maintain their rental status with us. And from a technology standpoint, the first thing that really had to be accelerated was how we can engage with our residents, bearing in mind that we are responsible, accountable for something in and around 60,000 individual units across Canada. The historic way in which notices would be provided to tenants would be through a site manager actually going around and delivering notifications. So the biggest opportunity up front was to accelerate the deployment of our resident portal, provide a means by which we can communicate with those residents who elected to subscribe to it, to provide that access to information in a safe and secure manner. Other areas where we're actively working and actively engaged and have been accelerated again as a consequence of the pandemic is the whole contactless engagement from a prospective tenant perspective. So online leasing is an example of that. The opportunity to be able to go through the whole of the leasing process without needing to engage in a physical person-to-person interaction. It's easier said than done, that there are multiple elements to that. And in addition, we've also been looking at the potential for self-guided tours, looking at technology that can be brought into some of the buildings from the standpoint of smart access. And by that, it's access not only to the building itself, which can be provided to couriers, for argument's sake, for the safe delivery of packages, but for prospective tenants to be given access to, if there's a vacant unit so that they can actually undertake a self-guided tour. We've improved our website dramatically, increasing the digital assets that are available to prospective residents in order to see the nature of the units that are available for rent. We're looking at, and this ties into an environmental piece as well to a degree, the use of broader smart technology within the units. So that's similar to that which you or I would have in a home, such as smart thermostats, water sensors and the like, all of which can actually help us not only reduce energy, but provide additional services to residents and prospective residents. Technology plays a role from a security perspective, cameras, clearly, but it also brings risk, to be quite honest with you. The moment that you start engaging in IoT, and we have a very successful deployment with our boilers that actually won awards. So we can help ensure that tenants have a constant temperature, that from a temperate perspective, we've got an external feed from a weather source that can identify changes and patterns in weather, which enables the boilers to automatically adjust accordingly, so that not only can we reduce energy consumption, but we can ensure that the comfort of our residents is actually maintained far better than it could in the past. Bringing in IoT, as you know, brings in security risk. And so we've had to think about it from a technology perspective, how we can isolate and separate those devices from the core capabilities that we have in the core systems that we have internally within CAPREIT as an organization. The need there obviously is protecting ourselves, because we have a great deal of PII under our control, and cyber is a risk that clearly we all face, and it's one which we take incredibly seriously from the perspective of any potential bad actor who could compromise not only our data, but any of those devices which are potentially controlled through IoT. So whilst we can bring in safe, secure, convenient capability through cameras, through some of these smart devices, we have to be equally cognizant of the security risk that comes along with it and be able to deal with that at the same time.
Wow, thank you for a wealth of insight. And I'm just trying to digest everything, all these great content you just shared there, Andrew. And you've alluded to the environmental aspect, and I like to kind of double click on that topic a little bit more. So can you share a little bit on the role of technology in creating impact on the environment?
Certainly, in our context, and actually from a Canadian standpoint, I think the third largest producer of carbon emissions are buildings. So we are working with external partners to look at opportunity areas for reducing our carbon footprint. It's clearly a critical component of our ESG strategy. And this is where, as I just mentioned, we've introduced IoT into the boilers to help ensure that we are optimizing their use. But the biggest area where we can really have an impact is in energy reduction, the consumption of energy reduction. It's not necessarily a technology-driven solution, to be quite honest with you. The biggest element of it really is going to be looking at how we source the energy which is consumed by the buildings that are occupied. So that's work there from the nature of the heating, for argument's sake, transitioning from potentially oil or gas-fired to electrical heating, which may sound counterintuitive, but it's not just the on-site creation of carbon emissions, but it's the creation of those carbon emissions from source. So it's understanding the whole of the journey in terms of where those emissions are created. And so we're working with external parties in that context to look at opportunity areas. Whether solar can bring any benefit is also another area. The hardest part to influence, and we touched on smart devices and smart thermostats, smart lighting, opportunity areas within the individual tenants' units, that can help have a reduction in energy usage. But this is an area that requires additional investigation to really determine the value proposition behind implementing that technology and the returns and impact it will have on the overall carbon emissions that we have. But we are committed organizationally to reduce our carbon footprint, and we'll be continuing to look at ways in which we can deal with that.
Yeah, such a meaningful undertaking. And I'm hearing contactless, smart, secure, and green. Very meaningful agenda and certainly very exciting times for the role of digital and technology in general to transform the business. And I'd love to wrap this conversation up with the last question, which is on talent. Talent shortage and retention remain top concerns for CIOs and organizations. I was so pleasantly surprised when we had our last conversation, and I learned from you that the employee engagement score for your IT organization is 94%, which is remarkable. What's your secret sauce?
I'd love to say it was me, to be quite honest. So I'm not going to say it's me. As you know, Nasheen, there are many factors in terms of really being able to help derive employee satisfaction. And in this context, I have to put it down to the team who work with me. I'm relatively new to the organization, so my ability to influence that, it has been somewhat limited. I think, if anything, I'm grateful that I haven't had an adverse impact on it, because, as you know, the moment you introduce change into an organization, it has an impact on colleagues, and there's always some uncertainty that brings with it. So we have a great organization. As I say, it's a people first, familial type of culture, very considerate of employees, significant attention to the diversity of our colleagues, caring for them, consideration in terms of personal needs, all of which have actually helped throughout the pandemic to ensure that no one has felt pressured, shall we say, to go into the office or to work in an environment where they felt potentially uncomfortable. So we've been very, very thoughtful in terms of how we do that. I think we've provided a meaningful strategy and direction and leadership to the team in terms of helping understand how all of the various components of what we're working on actually tie down or tie back to the organizational goals and objectives of CAPREIT and the value that we bring to them. So we've helped to draw the team together from that perspective as well. But in terms of talent and actually acquisition of talent, it is, and I'm sure everyone out there will agree, probably one of the hardest times that we've come across in terms of being able to find the right talent and retain it. We're certainly very cognizant of the talent we have internally and really nurture it to ensure that they remain with us. We have a very strong training budget for each colleague so that we give them the opportunity to grow their skills internally and benefit from the opportunities we give them. And likewise, we organizationally benefit from the improvement in their skills. What we've found we've had to do from the acquisition of new talent is really take a far more flexible approach. And that is that we're looking at a lot of contract resources, but with a view to permanent hire. So we found a lot of colleagues in the roles that we've been looking for are probably uncertain about really wanting to go back to full-time work. The pandemic has instilled a desire to have some form of hybrid environment. And I think what we've been able to do is to offer that flexibility. And so in looking at contract to permanent type of roles, it gives the potential employee the opportunity to get to know us, and it gives us the opportunity to get to know them. And if the relationship works and they elect to want to transition to full-time, we have that opportunity to do that. But if they decide that maybe we're not the organization for them, or vice versa, we decide that they're not the right fit for us, we can actually sever that relationship with ease and with both parties feeling positive about it. So we're trying to adopt a far more flexible approach. We're looking beyond our borders as well, which is something that I have done in the past. It's not something that I really relish, because I really would love to be able to develop talent that is local if it were available. But there are needs that we need to satisfy, and if necessary, we're looking abroad to actually fill those roles. but it is probably, I think, in the times that I've been here in Canada, which is just under 30 years, probably one of the most challenging in terms of finding colleagues who are really willing to join an organization on a full-time basis, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. And I do love your contract to permanent strategy. And I think that's a brilliant strategy, and it's a win-win situation for both the individuals and the organizations. Thanks, Andrew, for this thought-provoking and insightful conversation. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. I hope I've been some help.
You absolutely have been. You're watching another episode of Executive Insights by the IT Media Group. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please check out other content on our YouTube channel, including CIO roundtable conversations and executive interviews. And don't forget to subscribe.